Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are on a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
Hey, this is Kurt Angle, and welcome to the Kurt Angle Podcast. Today we have a special episode. It's Ask Kurt Anything. That's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to introduce to you right now the co-host, the man who exemplifies the three I's every single day. Oh, it's true. It's damn true. It's Conrad Thompson. How you doing, Conrad?
Man, I'm excited to be here. We get to pick your brain. This is my favorite format. We do this every other week with Arn Anderson, but this is our very first Ask Kurt Anything. And to my surprise, man, we've got like 12 pages worth of questions. I don't think there's any chance we'll get to them all. I'm having a lot of fun doing this show, and it seems like we're getting great feedback. What's the feedback you've gotten, Kurt?
Everything's been positive. I've looked at tweets and Instagram posts, messages. Everybody says they love the show, so we're doing something right, I think.
Absolutely. We're going to keep doing it. And by the way, we've got the entire year mapped out. You're going to get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. If you haven't already, check it out, including we're going to have a very special live event coming up where you get to actually be on a Zoom with Kurt Angle and pick his brain. So not just send a tweet in, but actually talk to him. Coming up next week, though, we're doing Backlash 2001. It's the ultimate submission match versus Chris Benoit. You don't want to miss it. It's coming live to adfreeshows.com. Let's jump into it, though. Matt Douglas wants to know, Kurt, you wrestled 3 matches in both 2000 and 2001 King of the Ring events. Which was the hardest to wrestle multiple times in one night? And is it true that Shane McMahon hits kind of hard?
Well, Shane can throw some haymakers, yes. Not all the time, but he can stiff you every once in a while, and he can hit pretty hard. But I would say the toughest Royal Rumble or the King of the Ring that I did, where I wrestled 3 matches in one night, was 2000, because it was my first King of the Ring. I was only in the business for 6 months, and I had a lot to remember. 3 matches in one night. It was extremely exhausting, both mentally and physically. And but I would say 2001, I wrestled a lot longer matches, especially with Shane. I think we went 32 minutes. So they were both very difficult to do, but I'd have to say my first King of the Ring was my toughest.
Jake Hicks wants to know, whose idea was the milk truck?
Oh, that was our writer, Brian Gewirtz. He came up with great material for me. It was a spinoff of Stone Cold Steve Austin's beer truck incident, where he brought the beer truck in and hosed down Vince McMahon a couple years prior. So since I was doing a program with Austin, Brian came up with the idea of driving the milk truck in and dousing Stone Cold in the alliance with milk. It was an awesome, it was an awesome event. Just so much fun. I had a blast.
Michael Burgett wants to know, if there's ever a movie made of your life, who would you like to play you?
Oh, I would say my biggest inspiration is Sylvester Stallone, a young Sylvester Stallone, if I could have that, if I got to choose. But his movies, Rocky, always inspired me. I think that would be a great inspirational story.
Uh, inhumane, Inhuman Rampager, maybe I said that right, says, I went to TNA Lockdown in 2008. What went into that match against Samoa Joe?
Well, Joe's very physical. We had an incredible match that night. That was when I believe I ended Joe's undefeated streak, and we put a lot in that match. It was a good, I think, 30 minutes, and we had a lot of false finishes, great submission trade offs. Joe reminded me a lot of Chris Benoit, just a lot bigger, and a little heavier, obviously, but he could move like a cat. He was incredible to work with.
Here's one from Grayson Flax. He says, Kurt, during your most recent WWE run, was there ever any talk about reforming Team Angle with you, Chad Gable, and Jason Jordan?
I brought it up and they kind of, let it go by the wayside, but I kept reminding them, and I think they would eventually did it. I think I would have managed both Gable and Jordan if Jordan did get injured. When he got injured, I think the idea fell through the table, and there was no other other wrestler. The just managing one wrestler wouldn't be a team. So you have to manage at least two of the wrestlers to make it a team. And since Jason got injured, I think that fell by the wayside, and it wasn't going to happen. I wish it would have, though.
Kurt Zamora says, as someone that came through the Attitude Era and then came back in the PG era, is TV PG as much of a handcuff for the performers as the fans believe it is? If WWE allowed themselves to go to a true TV 14 again, do you think it would help in any way?
Well, I think it would help, with some of the adult fans. With the kids, the company is a publicly traded company, and the shareholders are very concerned about what goes on, the content in the show. So, you have to abide by their rules that they want it to be kid friendly. So I understand, the Attitude Era, it was so much fun. We took a lot of chances, we took risks, and it paid off. And I think it would today. But, in this era, people are a little more offensive. You can offend people a little easier right now. So I don't think it's ever going to come back. I think that, the PG era is here to stay.
AC513 says, were there talks about you winning the undisputed title at Vengeance 2001? Of course, we know Chris Jericho wound up being the guy that night to pin not only The Rock, but Steve Austin. But he wants to know, do you think your name was discussed in that spot?
It actually was. I was actually set to win the title. But Vince McMahon came to me about a week before and said, hey, I'm not going to put the title on you. I'm going to put it on Jericho because he's red hot right now. He's working his way up. He needs this title more than you. And I agreed with Vince. I said, you're absolutely right. I'd put it on Jericho too if I were you. So there was considered for me to win the title, but I think that Vince went with Jericho because Jericho needed it more. And Chris was a red hot babyface at the time. And, giving him that title just legitimized him even more. He deserved it.
Matt from MJ asks a question, and his phrasing, I could see why someone would take offense, but I think he's trying to be complimentary. So let's do it. Who's the best in-ring worker you've wrestled that never really made it big? So said differently, maybe who is the most under you ever wrestled?
I would say, and I wrestled him late in my career, but I would say Chad Gable. I think this kid has so much potential. And I know the company started pushing him, then they laid off, and then they pushed him and laid off. But I don't know if it has to do with his size, but the guy is amazing. And he, in real life, he could whoop any of those wrestlers' asses. So,
Right.
he's a real life badass. And, to not have him go to the main event level where he deserves to be is just blows my mind because he is very talented. Great technical wrestler, former Olympian. You can't ask for anything more than that.
Do you think, and I don't know this, I'm just asking because you've been there, you've been everywhere. Do you think if Chad Gable, and I'm not saying he's asking for this, I think he recently re-signed, but if he were to leave WWE and go tear it up in New Japan, do you think if he came back with a fresh coat of paint, that perhaps American fans or even the WWE would see him differently?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't encourage him to do it.
No.
I wouldn't give anybody that type of advice. I want them to do what they were comfortable with doing. But I think Chad does need a makeover. I think that him going there and getting more experience and coming back with a different character or something that, a little bit of a subtle change, I think that would really help him. So I'm not saying he should do it. I'm just saying that it's not bad advice to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, it just feels like whenever a guy wants to sort of recreate himself, he needs to leave, and the most recent example of that to me is Drew McIntyre. I mean, he came in as the chosen one and then wound up being a 3-man band and then wound up cut, became the top guy in TNA, had a hell of a run in the UK, and he came back and now he's at the tippy top of the card. And I don't know if if he didn't have that time away, if anybody would have had a chance to look at him through a new lens, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there have been a lot of wrestlers that tried, were started in WWE, left and came back hotter than ever. So, it's happened in the past quite a bit. So I think that that's a great idea.
Let's keep it going here. Let's do another question. This one is from Crankles. Hope I said that right. Hey Kurt, were there other names pitched or tossed around instead of the stable name Main Event Mafia? Although also were there other names considered joining Main Event Mafia? I always loved the name and the members of that group.
Well, that group was etched in stone. It wasn't going to change, at least the first time we did it. The second time we did it, I think a couple of the guys left the company and we had to fill in some spots, I think with Samoa Joe and somebody else. But the first one, the main event, that's what it was all about. All of us were main events in our careers, and we became a mafia, the 5 of us. So that was never going to change. At least it wasn't supposed to. And we stuck with that as long as we could. And then, it ended up breaking up, I think, due to contract reasons.
Umar Khan says, Kurt, first of all, you're my favorite wrestler of all time. My question today is, when you left WWE in 2006, what was on your mind and what did you really want to do?
I was burned out. Working 300 days a year, getting injured all the time. My neck was a pain in the ass. I broke it 4 times in like 3.5 years. So I had to get away. I was having a painkiller issue. Had to take a break. I did for a few months, and I decided to work in TNA because the money was great and it was a reduced schedule. And I did what was best for my health. So I left the WWE. Unfortunately, I didn't want to leave, but I knew it was the right move for me. And I'm glad I did. TNA was a great option, and I had a lot of fun in that company, and Dixie Carter was really good to me.
I think Dixie Carter doesn't necessarily get the appreciation she deserves. I feel like for whatever reason, so much you ever hear some of my commercials and think to yourself, that sounds too good to be true. That's probably malarkey. Here's the deal, man. It's real. Just ask Jason up in North Branch, Minnesota. He left us a 5-star review for our work over at SaveWithConrad.com. He had this to say: my fellow wrestling fans and podcast listeners, Conrad's message is real. This process is very easy. Believe me, I've refinanced twice in the last 12 months. If the need ever arises again, without hesitation, I would make the call. Thank you, Conrad, and especially thank you, Derek. When you guys are in Minnesota, give me a shout. I'd love to buy you each a drink. We helped Jason save some cash and get an even better deal than he got somewhere else before, and you can do it too right now. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but it's worth another look. I'm telling you, what have you got to lose? Wouldn't you just like to have that peace of mind of knowing you've got the best deal for your family? Well, that's what my family can do for you right now at SaveWithConrad.com. Of TNA is just looked at as, oh, LOL TNA. But Dixie Carter really didn't have to get in the wrestling business. This wasn't necessary for her or her family, but she felt strongly about it. She invested her and her family's money and spent a lot of time, effort, energy, cash. And there are a lot of guys who got a lot of opportunities. And I don't know that Dixie Carter necessarily gets the credit she's due. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I thought she was a great boss. I had no problems with her. Sometimes, having a woman in charge is a lot better than a man because there's so much more understanding. They're more compassionate toward you, and they'll take care of you a little better. So Dixie always, would help me, especially in my downtimes. When I had my DUIs, she sat me down and said, "We got to get you help." And she's the reason. Her and my wife Giovanna are the reasons I went to rehab, uh, because she spoke to me honestly and candidly, and she wanted me to get help. She really cared about me. And very seldom do you have a boss that actually cares about you emotionally, and Dixie did.
I'm glad you shared that. I hope that wrestling fans come around on her. Aaron wants to know, Kurt, do you have any good Bruce Pritchard stories?
You know what? Yes, he. When I first started, when I tried out, Bruce was there, and the second day in, he went up and spoke in front of the wrestlers that were at a Dory Funk Dojo camp, and he said, "Listen, you're going to either be a babyface or a heel. Mr. Angle, you're going to be the biggest heel in the business, in the history of the business." And I looked at him, I said, "You're out of your mind. I'm an Olympic gold medalist." He goes, "That's exactly why you're going to be the biggest heel in the business. Because people don't like success. Fans don't want to hear how successful you are. And that's all you're going to talk about. And you're going to get on their nerves, and you're going to end up being a heel." And you know what? Bruce was absolutely right. I didn't believe him. I didn't believe Vince when he told me. But, Bruce told the whole group, about Kurt Angle and how I was going to be the biggest heel in the business. It made me feel kind of good, but it made me feel kind of bad because I wanted to be a babyface to start out. Winning a gold medal for your country, you're a good guy, and they had me do the opposite. And I totally didn't get why at the time, but I understood in the future.
Stephen Watts says, does Kurt have any memories of the stories of the hair versus hair match and feud with Edge and the hairpiece he wore afterwards? I always loved that feud.
Well, Edge, when he was shaving my head, he had the blades the wrong way. It was ripping my hair out. It wasn't cutting it, and my hair was wet too. So I had to give him the Iggy and say, "Turn the damn thing around," so it would shave the right way. But I loved the wig. I thought the wig was so damn stupid that it actually enhanced my character, made me look like a complete idiot, which is what they wanted. And it got me a lot of heat, coming out the next week and saying, "I just got my head shaved last week and look at my hair. It actually grew to its natural state." It was actually longer than it was originally. And I was wearing a headgear on top of it. It was just one of the funniest segments I did.
Adam Leeson says, Kurt, you had a short lived feud with S.A. Rios. Any memories of him or some of the lesser feuds he had?
I don't remember a lot of SA. I did have a feud with him, and I thought he was extremely talented in the ring, a great lucha libre wrestler. I understand why the company hired him. He was very effective for the company, and he he had some great matches. He was a great technician, great wrestler.
Here's one from Eric. He says, you mentioned the agent who tore up your first WWE contract and offer. Did you ever talk to him later once you became a big star and made a lot of money? And did he concede that avoiding WWE was a mistake?
He never conceded that, but he asked me if I was happy, and I told him I was. He retired from being an agent by the time I signed with WWE. So I did run into him, and he just asked if I was happy. I didn't rub it in his face or anything. I didn't want to tell him, "Hey, you're an idiot. You made a mistake. I should have signed with WWE in 1996." But I don't know how things would have been. My neck wasn't completely 100% healed when WWE approached me. So I'm not sure if going in 1996 would have been the right decision, even though I had neck issues later on, years later. But to start out with a neck issue would have been very difficult.
Dawson Field says, besides Brock Lesnar, what past opponent could have been your biggest challenge in an amateur wrestling match?
Shelton Benjamin, without a doubt. That kid is extremely gifted. One of the best athletes I've ever been in the ring with. I've actually wrestled with him a little bit amateur. We didn't really go live. We drilled. But he he was a late bloomer. This kid didn't start amateur wrestling until his junior year in high school. Won states both years, his junior and senior year, went to Minnesota, became a two-time All-American in college with just a few years experience. The kid, if he would have continued on, I think he would have become an Olympian. He was starting to mature by the time his senior year in college came around. So I think his best years were ahead of him, but he skipped that and went straight to the WWE.
It worked out.
It worked out, yes.
The WU channel says, name your 5 dream opponents, past or present, you would love to face at a WrestleMania.
Okay, let me see. This is a little weird. In the past, I would say Bret Hart.
Oh, yeah.
Owen Hart.
Okay.
I would have loved to wrestle Andre the Giant.
Really?
Yes. I know there wouldn't have been much offense for my aspect, for my part, but I know he would have been throwing me around like a rag doll, but it'd been a lot of fun to wrestle Andre.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody want to wrestle Andre? Why not? He's 7 foot tall, 500 pounds. He's a beast. I would say Iron Sheik, just for the pure entertainment of it. The guy's freaking crazy. I absolutely love him. And you know what? This is a hard one, but you're going to understand why. I would say Bob Backlund, because he was a former amateur wrestler, national champion. I think we would have had a really solid match.
No doubt. Man, you and Bret Hart, that's something people are going to be talking about.
That's the one I think about every day. I wish it would have occurred.
Dawson Field says, can you talk about your moonsaults you've done off the top of steel cages? What, if anything, goes through your mind when you're making the long climb to the top?
All you can do is climb, pray, and jump. There's nothing else you can do. It happens so fast. The longer you wait up there, the more you doubt yourself. So if you notice, when I do them, I get up there and I don't pause and I don't think about it, or I don't even want the crowd to think I'm thinking about it, because a lot of times, when Shane got up there, he would do, he would pause, take a deep breath, do the sign of the cross, take another deep breath and then go, because he wanted the fans to anticipate him going. But when you do that, you start to doubt yourself. So I just go up there, do the quick sign of the cross, and I jump real quick. I don't waste a lot of time, because I just want to get it over with, because I know I'm going to have to deal with the pain later.
I can't believe it, but I actually saw you do that here in Huntsville. It was one of the last events that I believe Sting was a part of. And I forget who you wrestled, but it was a cage match, and it was at Von Braun Center. And for whatever reason, it had not been promoted very strongly locally. So it was not a capacity crowd, not near it. And when you started to make the climb, I was lucky enough to have ringside seats, and I could see just how high you were going and thinking, I can't believe he's going to do this, but you did. All of the impact on that, is it all knees? Is it hips? Is it ankles? Where does the brunt of the blow land?
It's a little bit of everything, but your knees and your toes are going to get it the most. Your toes jam into the mat, your knees bounce off the mat. It can be, detrimental to your knees. I did it one time, and I had to have knee surgery afterward. It was just a meniscus tear, but it did injure my knee. And, so I haven't been 100% clean with all my moonsaults. I've suffered dearly from some of them.
Slick Willie wants to know, did Kurt and Steiner have any kind of kinship being amateur wrestlers? And also, please tell us a funny Scott Steiner story.
I don't have any funny Scott Steiner stories, even though he was but yeah, we had an understanding. We were both amateur wrestlers. We both had a lot of respect for each other. Scott has this personality where he likes to mess with the talent. He likes to rib the talent and, play jokes on them, and, nothing too mean, just funny stuff. And he never did that with me, because he had a complete respect for me. So he wouldn't mess with me much with that aspect. But I really respected Scott. I respected his amateur wrestling career, his pro wrestling career, and just the person he was. He was an amazing person.
Richie Colombo says, what's your all-time favorite move? No, movie, not move, movie.
either Rocky or Warrior. And Warrior because it was an excellent story, not because I was in it, even though I was Koba. But Warrior and Rocky, I love their stories. They're so inspirational. I love movies like that where they show real sport and they show people overcoming adversity. That's my type of movie.
I got to go see Warrior now.
Yes, you do.
George,
Tom Hardy and Joe Edgerton were incredible in it. And Nick Nolte. He was awesome.
Jordy P says, is there anyone from the NXT roster that Kurt wishes he could have had a match with?
Oh, I would say right now, Velveteen Dream. I love the kid. I'm crazy about him. It's extremely talented. I love his new character. I think it's raising eyebrows. I think he's got a lot of interest in him, and the fans seem to take to him pretty well. So I love his talent. I think he's exceptional.
Rory wants to know, how involved were you in the team angle concept? Are there any other wrestlers you would have liked to have had join your stable?
We didn't have any other wrestlers planned. The team angle concept was to help me become champion. I would utilize these, my goons, I guess you would call them, my teammates, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, and throw them in front of Brock to keep Brock away from me. That was the whole idea at the beginning. But it caught on and it became very popular, and we stuck with it for a while. Not long enough. We should have that team angle for 10 years. We only had it for like 6 months because I got injured, and then I came back from injury, and Vince McMahon wanted me to wrestle Shelton and Charlie and go for the world title on my own. But I absolutely love team angle, and we didn't have any we weren't looking for any other talent to be added to it. The only time I considered it again was in 2017 when I came back and I wanted to get Jason Jordan and Chad Gable in the team angle.
Well, here's one, and this is a fun name. Jim Bob Squarepants wants to know, how fun was it to have yourself, Stone Cold, and Vince McMahon doing the cowboy hat kumbaya skits?
That was so much fun. It was the best time I had in my career. And you know what? I think the reason we started is because Steve and I got injured.
Yep.
Pay-per-view, and I wrestled Shane at the King of the Ring, and he wrestled Booker T, and we both hurt our backs. So they didn't want two of the top guys in the company to be sitting at home. So Vince said, we're gonna entertain the fans the best way we can. We're gonna use Austin and Kurt. They have great chemistry. They're complete opposite characters. And Vince McMahon's going to be right in there with them. They're going to make a little team, and they're going to be a bunch of idiots. So, it was so much fun doing that. And it was so hard not to laugh when we were doing the pre-tapes, but Vince, if you would have laughed, Vince would have gotten mad, and he probably would have said, "You're fired." So we weren't going to be able to enjoy the pay-per-view until the director said cut. And then everybody would break out laughing. It was so much fun.
Jay wants to know, who are some of your all-time favorite tag team partners and why?
My favorite was Chris Benoit because he matched my intensity. He was same type of wrestler I was, a technician. I thought we had great chemistry as a team and as opponents, but I really enjoyed tag teaming with Chris. I thought we could have done it a lot more.
Duzatelli says, your outer ring segments with The Rock and Stone Cold were legendary. I still smile every time I think of them. From all your time in the business, what were your favorite segments, and who was the most enjoyable to work them with?
Well, I had some great segments with Rock. I had some great segments with Austin. The one in particular with Austin would have been the milk truck incident, which was incredible. The cowboy hats, singing with guitars. We had a lot of fun. With Rock, we always do promos backstage, pre-tapes where, Dwayne would put me down or insult me, and I would insult him back. And, and then there were times when we were both baby faces where, we would talk about milk, and I'd be talking about big jugs of milk, and, it goes great with pie, Rock, and, and insinuating women's breasts. But I wasn't really meaning that. I was just saying I just want great big jugs of milk to drink, and put my hands out there. Rock was like, yeah, you go get that milk, Angle. We had a lot of fun doing those pre-tapes. It was so much fun. We had a blast.
Jake wants to know, when you were inducted into the Hall of Fame, you had John Cena induct you. What went into that decision? What was the conversation between you guys like? And do you still remain in touch these days?
We don't remain in touch that much, but I respect the hell out of John. Um, I did want him to induct me in the Hall of Fame. I didn't ask for him, but Vince McMahon decided that he wanted John to induct me in the Hall of Fame. I believe it's because I started off John's career with a wrestling match, and I think that Vince wanted John to show his appreciation for that. And I was elated because John is not only the most popular WWE superstar of all time, he's an incredible speaker. He's really articulate and innovative with his speeches. And when you have someone talking about you and how good you are and how accomplished you are, it makes you feel really good, especially coming from a guy like John Cena.
Darnell Willison says, we've seen plenty of amateur wrestlers transition to pro wrestling, but can you think of any pros that you worked with who you believe had the aptitude to wrestle amateur?
Well, I would say Samoa Joe would have been great. AJ Styles, although AJ did wrestle in high school, he won a state title. I totally forgot about that, but he didn't continue on in college. But I think Daniel Bryan would have been a great wrestler. There's a lot of guys that would have done really well. They're usually the ones that are technical wrestlers in pro wrestling. They're usually the guys that do a lot of the technical wrestling. So, you can adapt to amateur wrestling. You just have to practice it quite a bit.
Amy Miller says, Kurt, what's your biggest regret in wrestling?
My biggest regret was breaking my neck. That everything went downhill from there. My whole career, my painkiller problem got worse. It actually started with my neck being broken in 2003. And I just wish it would have never happened. I would have had a nice, long, successful career, drug-free, and would have been elated about it. So that is my biggest and probably one and only regret.
Blunt Bash says, what, if any, creative ideas have you turned down? Do any stand out?
I never turned down anything creative. I always said yes. I was always crazy enough to do it. So, they would tell me to cut a promo, I would do it. They'd tell me to do something in a match, I would do it. But I've always been about making my father figure proud, Vince. So I never said no to Vince. I mean, even when I got traded to Raw the one time and Batista got hurt and I had to go back to SmackDown, I was only on Raw for a month. I was like, Vince, I just got here. Like, you want to take me back to SmackDown? He said, we need you, man. We need you in this spot. And I said, okay, I'm a team player. I'll do it. So being a team player is probably the reason why.
Keegan says, if you could have faced Bret Hart at any point in your career, which respective prime years would you have wanted to face the Hitman if you had a time capsule? And in addition, if you had a stipulation added to the match, what would it have been?
I'd say 1995, Bret. I watched a film of him, and I think he was at his best in 1995 to 1996. I loved watching him work. I think the gimmick would have been an Iron Man match. I think that would have best suited us. No gimmicks, just 60 minutes wrestling, just like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart did. I believe that was in 1996.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the type of match I would have wanted with Bret. It would have been exciting and just very successful match.
Kenneth Smith says, do you still own all your ring gear throughout the years? If so, do you have a particular favorite? I always loved your WrestleMania 17 attire.
I love the WrestleMania 17 attire too, but I kind of messed up. I didn't mess up. I gave most of my gear to charities and Hall of Fames. And, I was never a keepsake kind of person. So
yeah.
My wife is. So I got a lot of heat from her when she said, where's all your ring gear? And I said, I gave it all away years ago. And she's like, why would you do that? You got to keep all that stuff. What about our kids? They're going to want to know who their dad was and how good he was back in the day. Why would you give away your gear? So she started buying it back on eBay. So I'm buying gear like T-shirts and singlets and stuff. She's just trying to get it all back, and we're just ordering whatever we can to try to buy it back. And just I don't have a lot of the T-shirts that WWE and TNA made of me. And so that's what we're buying back. We're not really buying the ring gear back because I gave that away. But the shirts and merchandise is what we're buying.
Uncle J89 says, "What's the one match in WWE and TNA that you wish you could redo, and why?"
I never had a match that I wish I could have redone, but there was one night when Eddie Guerrero, and this was probably a month before he passed away, maybe 2 months. Eddie was having problems with his energy. He was really run down. His skin was not toned. He was white. And he would walk backstage like this. And then when he'd go out to the ring, when his entrance, he was Eddie, hey, it's showtime, but when he was backstage, he was having a lot of issues with energy. And I think it was his heart just not pumping at the proper pace. And one night, it was in Texas. I can't remember what city. I had a match with him. It was a lumberjack match. And Eddie just broke down. And at one point, he was so unhealthy. I don't even want to say tired, just unhealthy. He grabbed the rope and he wouldn't let it go. And I was trying to shoot him off. I'm like, Eddie, we got to go. And he's like, no, 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 no. And I was like, oh my God, he's cracking. And I didn't know that he had the heart problems. So that's one match I would have definitely liked to take back. And it's just because Eddie was in no condition to wrestle at that time, but nobody knew about his heart problem. I mean, that came out of nowhere the day he passed away. So, it was, thank God the match was taped. It was a SmackDown match and it was pre-taped. So we were able to clean it up before we aired it on UPN, I believe it was. But it was a night that I regret, that I wish I could take back, because Eddie was always the greatest in-ring performer, one of the greatest I've ever been in the ring with, and that wasn't Eddie Guerrero that night.
Jason Bayless says, "There's a long-standing rumor that at Survivor Series 2001, Kurt and Steve's roles in the finish were supposed to be the opposite. Vince wanted Austin to remain heel, but Steve insisted on going back babyface after the pay-per-view. Is there any truth to this?"
I have no idea, but I was the mole in the company that basically turned on WCW and sided with WWE at the last second. I'm not sure if Austin was supposed to do that or if I was, but I think Vince did like Steve as a heel. I don't think Steve felt comfortable as a heel, because he was so over as a baby face that it was unbelievable. I mean, even as a heel, he was still getting cheered.
Right.
So it was really hard keeping him heel. And I don't blame him for wanting to turn back baby.
Here's one that we haven't talked about before. It's about the UK. Francis says, "How much fun did Kurt have on his UK speaking tour, and what did he learn the most about it?"
Well, I learned how incredibly passionate the fans in the UK are. That was, that was a huge wake up call. They're some of the most exciting fans in the world for pro wrestling. They absolutely love it. And I got nothing but great feedback from them, and doing that with them and communicating with them was a big plus for me. I really enjoyed it. And being able to speak to them and tell them my advice on stuff and what I did in my career, the mistakes I made, and the accomplishments that I accomplished. It was a lot of fun to do that. It was a very grueling tour because we traveled every day by car to different cities, and we would do, the stadiums of the soccer players. And they would have a room backstage, and they would be able to fill like 300-400 seats in there, and we would have it there. So it was a really grueling tour, but I really enjoyed it. And I got to bring my wife.
That's always fun. Chris wants to know, what's your favorite world championship belt? I think he means, from Japan, TNA, WWE, all the stuff you won. Did you have a favorite belt? Just the design of it, the look of it?
I actually like the WWE Championship, probably because it was my first title, and I do like the look of it. The look, it's a little different than the other titles, but I actually like that style.
Dave Pearson says, huge fan, really digging the podcast. What type of opponent did you prefer to work with? A technician like Benoit or Eddie, a brawler like Austin or Taker, or a showman like The Rock and Shawn Michaels?
I would take all of them. I love being versatile and being able to wrestle anybody, and it was a big challenge for me. So I enjoyed all of them, but in reality, what I would truly like is the technicians. That's my favorite style of wrestling. That's always what I've done. Even in amateur wrestling, my technique was sharp, and I enjoy doing that type of wrestling.
WrestleManiac says, what does Kurt consider to be his best match in TNA?
My best match in TNA is probably my match with Samoa Joe at Lockdown, um, or the cage match. I believe we had. I can't remember when that was, but Samoa Joe and I had great chemistry, and I really enjoyed working with him. He was very light on his feet, and he moved extremely well. He just had great assets to him. He's an incredible talent, especially for his size. He's a big dude, and he's scary looking. He's very I guess imposing, but what a nice guy and a great wrestler in the ring.
WrestleManiac wants to know, what did Kurt think of Paul Heyman as the executive director of Raw compared to the others who've been in that role?
I love Paul Heyman. I think that anytime you have him in the business, it's always a good move. I think he came up with great ideas and concepts. I wasn't against it. I think that Paul Heyman, what he was able to do for ECW, proved that he deserved that type of job, and I think he did really well with it.
Let's do Danny's question here. When you were the GM of SmackDown in '04 and you had a storyline broken leg, how did you travel without fans seeing you without the cast?
I had to put a knee brace on and walk around with crutches. I didn't have a wheelchair. I had to go through the airports. I had to take my knee brace off through security, put the crutches on the belt, and it was just a pain in the ass. But I had to do it. I couldn't break kayfabe. I had to do it as for the enduring time that I was GM.
Daniel Jefferson says, does Kurt have any good stories about working on the film Warrior? How hard was it to film MMA style fights?
It wasn't that hard. It was just that we did quite a bit of it. There was a lot of filming the fights with the stunt doubles and the fighters, the actors that were the lead roles. So there was a lot that goes into that, but I really enjoyed it. Gavin O'Connor is one of the most gifted directors I've ever worked with. I really enjoy being with him, but he was very thorough. He wanted things the way he wanted them, and if he didn't see it, we had to keep doing it over and over again until we got it right. And I respect that. I think he made the best call doing that. But it was a lot of fun to do. It was just a lot of work.
Jeremy Israel says, what do you think Gable Stevenson's upside is if he decides to pursue a career as a pro wrestler?
I think he's going to be a big star. Look at his look. If he adapts to pro wrestling and picks it up like Brock Lesnar, he's going to be exactly like Brock Lesnar. So I think he needs to take the chance, whether he goes to MMA or WWE, one or the other, but he's got to do one of them. I think that he is a future star regardless what he does. He's got a great look to him. Great athlete.
Sade says, how do you feel about Apollo Crews using the angle slam, or when Randy Orton briefly used it many years ago?
I I got heat from Randy for tweeting out one time that he stole my finish, and I told him I was just kidding, and but he was pretty pissed off. But I was just kidding. I anybody that wants to come up with a move or wants to do somebody's move, as long as you're not in that company, you might as well use it. So if Apollo wants to use it, I'm retired. So might as well remind people of something that I did in the past. And, it'll make my legacy carry on to some extent. So I'm glad Apollo's using it.
Billy Freeman says, where do you keep your gold medal these days?
Well, I had an incident with my kids where they threw the medal into the wall and the gold medal, the part of it got dented. So I keep it in my safe. No more kid time with the medal. I used to take it with me on appearances and show people, but the gold started wearing off. Believe it or not, a gold medal is not really gold; it's silver. Yes, it's gold-plated silver. They're too cheap to make it solid gold. So I just want to throw that in there. But I have to get it re-dipped in gold, and keep it in the safe till I do it.
How often do people try to buy your gold medal? That feels like that collectors would come out of the woodwork for something like that.
I never had an offer for someone to buy it. I'm actually surprised, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll text you later. Here's a question from Christian. He says, during your rap battle with John Cena, how appreciative were you of Brian Hebner's beatboxing skills?
Oh, Brian was awesome. He actually made that even better. I mean, just telling him he reminds me of the police academy guy and, who the African-American guy that do the beatbox in police academy. And it was a lot of fun doing the promo, but Brian actually made that thing extra special.
Couple questions here about Memphis. I know you don't probably remember a ton about Memphis, but let's take a stab at it. The man of the 90s says, what are Kurt's memories of working with legendary Memphis wrestling announcer Dave Brown in Power Pro Wrestling?
Dave was a legend. He's a big name down there, and I think he interviewed me once. I actually enjoyed him. He was a great commentator. He was really good at his job. He deserved it. And he's a legend down there. He absolutely is.
One more about Memphis. Does Kurt remember working with sensational Steve Bradley at Memphis? I thought he could have been the WWF's answer to a Rob Van Dam type, but for whatever reason, it never worked out.
Steve is the reason I became so good so fast.
Really?
When I tried out for WWE, he was there at the camp, and they glued me to his hip for 6 months. That's all I did was train with Steve and work with Steve. He taught me everything. And I knew he was going to make it big. I knew he was going to be the next Rob Van Dam, maybe even a little more, versatile than Rob as far as his promo skills and everything. Rob was good too. Don't get me wrong. Rob was exceptional, but Steve was very, very talented. And I'm surprised he didn't make it. But what happened, I think, was he went to OVW and they were thinking about putting him on TV. They came up with a character that was a college student. They wanted him to be, because he was so young. So they wanted him to be like a dumbass college student. That's what they were going to start with him. And then they asked him to go to Puerto Rico for a while, I guess for a favor for somebody down there. And they forgot about him for a few years. And then I think Bruce brought him back to OVW and things just fizzled out. And I'm just surprised and shocked that Steve Bradley didn't make it big. He was the reason I made it in the company. And I think that his talents people would absolutely love them. He passed away, I think, 14 or 15 years ago. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think he passed away in 08. But even when you went in the Hall of Fame, I think on stage you called him an unsung hero in your career, right?
Yes. And he was. I had to thank him, especially him being up in heaven with the good Lord. I'm very grateful for what he did for me.
That's a good story, man. I'm glad we got to do that one. Frank wants to know, with hindsight being 2020, given the fact that the 96 Olympics took place in WCW's backyard, do you find it strange you never got an offer from them? Or did someone from WCW reach out and maybe I'm just misremembering?
No, somebody did approach me. I'm not sure who it was. Somebody called me and told me that they were interested and that they heard I was interested in WWE because I just met with WWE that week. This was the same week. This is right after the Olympics when Vince offered me that multi-million-dollar deal. And somebody called me and they said, hey, if you want advice, call Ric Flair. So I called Ric Flair. They gave me his number, and I'm like, Rick, how you doing? It's Kurt Angle. He's like, oh, my God, Kurt Angle. I watched you in the Olympics. I really appreciate your wrestling. My son's a wrestler. We started talking about wrestling, and I said, would it be smart to go to WCW? He said, hell no. He said, no way. They're not going to use you right. You go to WWE, Vince will take care of you. Don't come to WCW. They're going to bury you. And Rick was working for WCW at the time. So I thought, he either doesn't want me to take his spot or he's being honest. And I think he was being honest. I think he was being honest. Yeah.
Jeremy Slizzard says, Double A recently told the story about where you wrestled Cena. He said Cena went out in the crowd and used a foam finger to flip you off, and you beat the holy hell out of Cena for it. Do you remember this match? Was this all planned, or were you trying to teach John a lesson that night?
You know what? I didn't agree with what he did, and I wanted to send a little message to him, and I just worked a little more snug. I wanted him to know that, when you go off and do stuff like that, we have a time frame, and I have the match mapped out in my head because John had less experience. I was calling the match, and it's not what I wanted to do at that particular time because John was hovering between baby and face at the time, and I was too. And I didn't want, the crowd to be rocked either way. I wanted to be a half baby, half face for both of us. And John, wanted to turn baby face and flip me off with a big finger. And so I sent him a message that night that you don't do that. We got to, if you're going to do it, tell me first. Don't just go and do it. And he didn't tell me first. But other than that, I didn't have a problem with John. John was great to work with. He was exceptional athlete, had a great personality. He had a great, I guess, work ethic. He was willing to work hard to make it, and he did.
Another one from Jeremy here. During your pursuit of Olympic gold, what did your weekly training regimen consist of?
Oh gosh, I would train 9 to 10 hours a day. It was really difficult because I got into this thing. It was called exhaust training, and that's when you train till you're exhausted, and that's when the training begins. So you train till you can't stand up anymore, and then you start training again. And it worked extremely well. My conditioning went through the roof. I never got tired. I would wear my opponents down. It was the only way I was going to win the Olympic gold medal because I wasn't the best. I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the most technical. But what I did have is I had lungs, and I had endurance. And if I could keep the match close long enough, I would wear my opponents down and get them tired. And that's when it really kicked in, and that's when I would win the matches. So I trained myself to do that. And in the mornings I would train for about 2 hours. I would run 7 miles. I would do 200-yard hill sprints. I'd go back and do sprint and jog on the Airdyne for 30 minutes, and then I would do a half-hour sauna. In the afternoon, I would go over technique wrestling. I would wrestle live for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I would do conditioning again. And at night, I would do my plyometrics, my isometrics, my heavyweight weight training, and more conditioning. So I was doing 9 to 10 hours a day every single day of the week. I took 1 day off a month, and that was it.
It's no wonder you broke your freaking neck in hindsight, is it?
Yes, it's ironic.
Avenue NWO for Life says, if you could go back and visit 1999 Kurt Angle, what one piece of advice would you give him?
I would say, I guess that's a tough question.
It is tough, man.
I would say watch out for, painkillers. Be careful what you do and what you put in your body. I struggled with that for years, and it was a pain in the ass. And I hurt a lot of people, and did a lot of things I shouldn't have done. And, you regret that. You wish you could go back and tell your former self that. And that's the one thing I would say.
Somewhere your wife's in the background saying, "Don't give away your shit." That's what it should have been. uh, Liam wants to know, what are Kurt's memories of the plane ride from hell?
Oh God, it was the longest night of my life. The thing was, I was on the plane and Vince had a few wines in him, a few glasses of wine, and he was feeling frisky, and he thought, hey, why not? If I'm going to wrestle someone that's the best, might as well wrestle an Olympic gold medalist. I'm going to try him out. You have to understand, Vince is the type of guy that would say to Mike Tyson, hey, knock me out. Go ahead, hit me in the face. I want to feel what it's like. He wants to feel what it's like to be with the best person.
Yeah.
Do. And I totally get it, but Vince is crazy. So he was, jumping on me, and or he would have somebody come get me and say they wanted to talk to me in the back of the plane. I'd get up and he'd jump me from behind and we would wrestle. We did it for 5 hours. Like, wrestling a few minutes, I'd hold him down. I'd say, are you good? He's like, yeah, we're good. And I go back and lay down and he would jump on me again. Or, he would have someone call me up and go to the back of the plane. He'd jump on me again. So it went for 5 hours and it just became very irritating. And, when we were getting ready, the crazy thing is we were on the plane and there was wine stains all over the floor. The floor was white carpet and there was just wine stains everywhere. And Vince and I are wrestling near the door, the latch. You open the latch and push it open. The door's open. You fly out of the plane. We kept hitting the latch while we were wrestling. So the flight attendant came and said, hey, the pilot said if you don't sit down and stop, he's going to land this plane right now. And Vince says, go tell the pilot to fuck himself. I'll buy the fucking plane. I was like, oh my God. So here we are wrestling on the plane and we're getting ready to land. And they finally get Vince to calm down. And we're getting ready to hit the ground. And Jericho's sitting in front of me. He looks back at me and says, hey, look who's coming up the aisle. And while we're hitting the ground, landing, Vince's army crawling up the aisle to jump on me again. I'm like, holy shit, this is the night that will never end. It was a freaking nightmare.
Unbelievable. Ed Dead by Dawn says, what's your favorite Austin match?
My match with him was SummerSlam was my favorite match, 2001. I really enjoyed the match. I just kind of disappointed that it was a DQ, I believe. And I would have rather have a win on that match, but that wasn't going to happen. They had plans for Steve to continue with the title, but we were able to change that. When 9/11 occurred, I went to Vince and I told him that, since I'm doing a program with Austin, the next pay-per-view, maybe we should put the title on me. I'm the Olympic gold medalist, the American hero. It would be great for the country. The people would be inspired. He said, you need to talk to Steve. That's all he said. So I called Steve and Steve said, I'm good. Let's do it. And little did I know it was only going to be for a week. I only held the title for a week, but it was good enough for me. It was a great moment that night. And I think I inspired a lot of people coming out of 9/11. That was the whole idea.
Here's one that we haven't talked about before. Luke from Eastern Iowa says, do you have any stories about the legendary Dan Gable or Iowa's legendary wrestling program?
Yes. Do you know how hard I trained? I just explained everything to you.
Yes.
Okay. Gable does it 5 times worse. I did a camp with him, a world championship camp, the 1995 Worlds. I was on the world team. That's when I won my first world championship. We went to Iowa to train and we were there for 3 weeks. It was the worst 3 weeks of my life because he trains you into the ground to where you are just completely spent, just exhausted. And the training doesn't stop. Our day off, we were supposed to have a day off. He said, hey, I decided we're going to wrestle 1 match today. Now, a regular college match is 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. So I thought, okay, we're going to warm up. We're going to wrestle a 7-minute match. Shouldn't be that hard. It'll be tiring because, we're going to go full tilt for 7 minutes. But as we start the match, I notice after 20 minutes, he doesn't say the 3 minutes is up yet. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Why aren't we breaking to round 2? And they said, well, just keep wrestling. So we did. We went 30 minutes, and then someone said, hey, Gable, I thought we were going one match today, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. He said, no, we're doing 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. So our day off, we wrestled 50 minutes live. And not only that, we had to do an hour and a half of conditioning. And the warm-up alone was 45 minutes. And that was a conditioning segment too. But we trained, 10 to 12 hours a day. It was extremely difficult. And I understand why those Iowa kids are always ready to compete. They're always, a lot of them can be overtrained a little bit, and that's probably why they don't do as well at the Nationals if they don't. But for the most part, you get a kid at Iowa that wants to go to Iowa, there's a reason he wants to go. He wants to be trained by Gable. The Brands brothers were a great example. They loved training like that. They were animals, and that's what they wanted. And they proved that. They won Olympic golds and world championships and NCAA titles. So, if you're an Iowa kid, you like the way Dan Gable trains you, because it's almost impossible.
Matt Benson says, before settling on the ankle lock, was there any other submission hold you were thinking of using? And why don't you stick with the chicken wing?
Well, I didn't think the chicken wing was that legitimate of a move. I wanted to do something that an MMA guy was doing. And, Ken Shamrock started the ankle lock, and I thought it was a great idea. And, Ken ran with it and did really well. So when he left, I decided to take it up for myself. And, Ken gave me his blessing, and I continued to use it. And I absolutely loved it. I was able to come with different submission trade-offs from one submission to another with Benoit and with Undertaker and with different opponents, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan. I actually didn't wrestle Daniel Bryan. I'm just thinking of his submission move. But it was a lot of fun. And I thought that, having the ankle lock would legitimize me more as a combat wrestler and technician, submission specialist.
Here's one from Alan Jackson. We love his music. He says, has Kurt seen any good fights backstage he wasn't involved in? Has he ever seen anyone get into it with either Vince or Bruce?
No, I never saw anyone get into it with Vince or Bruce, but no fights backstage. I never saw a fight. I was involved in a fight with Eddie Guerrero. Eddie and I were like brothers. We played like brothers, and we fought like brothers. And there was a night where this is where, right before Eddie passed away. So he wasn't feeling very good physically. And a couple of my guys on my, from the what do you call it, society? What's it called? The Honor Society. I think I had the faction I had with Luther Reigns and
Mark. The Straight Edge. No, that was before.
It was called the something society. I forget. The name sucked, but they laid into Eddie a little bit too hard when they got heat on him at the end of a match in the ring. I didn't touch Eddie, so when we got backstage, Eddie was pissed, and he was going crazy. He's like, "You were freaking hurt me. You tried to hurt me. You were stiffing me in the ring." And I'm like, "Eddie, I didn't do anything. I didn't touch you." He's like, "Yes, you did, and your Goonies too." And he started going crazy, and he got in my face, and he's yelling and he's spitting, and so I pushed him. And then when I did that, he tried to double leg me. And I got him in a front face lock and started choking him out, and Big Show broke it up. And the crazy thing is, later on that night, John Bradshaw Layfield, who likes to stir the pot, goes to Eddie and says, "Why would you double leg an Olympic gold medalist?" And Eddie says, "Because I'm freaking stupid. That's why." So it was the only fight I was involved in. It's the only fight that I did see firsthand, and it was my own fight with Eddie.
Timmy Skelly wants to know, what's Kurt's honest opinion of milk?
Oh, I love it. It's wholesome and nutritious. I enjoy it. I prefer skim milk because it has less fat in it, but I do like whole milk as well, even 2%. I like all kinds of milk. I even like 1%. If they had a 10%, I would like that too, because I absolutely adore milk. I think milk is the greatest thing in the world.
Oh, if they had 10%, I'd like that too. That's the line of the day. Two more, then we'll wrap this one up. Gilly says, Kurt, one of my absolute favorite pops was yours at Invasion pay-per-view in 2001. You were slowly turning face, having been a heel for 18 months solid. At that night, the crowd was absolutely crazy for you. Do you remember it? And how did you feel to get such a reaction?
Oh, it was awesome. I never thought it was going to occur. I just thought that I was going to be a heel my whole career because it was working so well. And I knew eventually I would get stale as a heel. And the term was perfect. And I absolutely loved it. It was a great moment for me and one of the best moments of my career.
Last one. This is from Bobby Coffee. He says, of all the highlight reel moonsaults in your career, which one was your personal favorite? Even though it looked like a rough landing, the one against Mr. Anderson was mine just for the awesome aerial camera shot of your leap from the top of the cage.
Well, I would have to agree with you. And the reason is because very seldom did I ever hit the moonsault. I usually missed it. And that night I hit Anderson with the moonsault. I landed on his face, which I misdiagnosed his midsection. But, the aerial shot of that was fantastic. It was probably 10 feet in the air, but the aerial shot made it look like 20 feet. It really was deceptive. And so I understand why that was his favorite moonsault, because the aerial video of that photo was exceptional. It was awesome.
Well, what else is awesome is physicallyfit.com. If you haven't already, cruise over there, click where to buy, and scroll down, and you'll see all the stores near you that carry chicken snacks. It's my favorite here at the office, but it turns out they've also got plant protein as well. Believe it or not, there's 3 places that are within driving distance. One that's just 2.3 miles from my house here. And if you click on order now online, you can get it shipped straight to you. Not just chicken snacks, but Snack Smart, which is plant protein in a ton of different flavors. I think Mrs. Angle really likes the brown sugar or the cinnamon swirl. My family seems to really, really dig the buffalo wing. It's a favorite at the office. I know Kurt's fond of the Kung Pao. I rock the sriracha. There's something for everybody, and there's even a way to save money when you go to physicallyfit.com, right, Kurt?
Yes, if you go to physicallyfit.com and you type in AnglePod, the code for AnglePod, you will get 20% off of our products. And it doesn't matter how much you order. You can order as much as you want.
Absolutely. 20% off your entire order. Check it out. Tons of different flavors. It's a healthy snack. It's something that Kurt Angle really believes in. It's Kurt's company. The best way to promote the show, physicallyfit.com, and pick up your chicken snacks. By the way, it is at retailers in your area. You can also pick it up in person, and of course, amazon.com. But if you want to get 20% off and save yourself a couple bucks, then use AnglePod over at physicallyfit.com. And speaking of a couple bucks, that's about what it costs to get your autograph, man. I can't believe you're doing this. People can send stuff to Pennsylvania and you'll autograph it. You even got autographed cowboy hats for sale, autographed milk cartons, autographed photos, birthday cards, video requests, and it's all at kurtanglebrand.com. Kurt, what's going on, man? You're like a man of 1,000 different hats over there.
I'm making it affordable for the fans to buy my merchandise. So I'm trying to keep it as cheap as possible. The photos are only $31. The birthday cards are $26. The milk cartons are a little more expensive. They're $50, but I will sign them, personalize them, do whatever you want. When you order, you can send a message to me what you want on the card or on the photo, and I will do that for you. So go to kurtanglebrand.com to order your merchandise now.
You can even grab a cameo, a pro wrestling t-shirt. Just check it out. It's kurtanglebrand.com. And don't forget to check out physicallyfit.com. You've got to try some chicken snacks and just Google it. Throw it in your Twitter machine, because I'm telling you, mine and your Twitter feed is blowing up with our listeners who are enjoying chicken snacks. They're checking it out. And I think it's almost like, okay, it's Kurt's thing. I'll check it out. But once they try the product, they're reordering left and right. Right, Kurt?
Yes, everybody reorders. So we always get repeat customers because the product is very good and it tastes really good.
It's tremendous. It's true. It's true. Kurt Angle has a snack for you. It's physicallyfit.com. Next week, we're going to be back talking about the ultimate submission match with Chris Benoit. That's going to be a fun show, right, Kurt?
Oh, it'd be extremely fun. That's my second favorite match with Chris Benoit. I'm excited to talk about it.
and it's happening next week right here on the Angle Pod. We'll see you next week. It's the Kurt Angle Show with your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle.
Take care, guys.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.